Do you like your career? Really? Do you want to change it? Well, you're at the right place. We can help you. Here at Wema DevOps, we can train you. We can help you to not only just change your career, but also to actually succeed in it. Welcome to Wema DevOps.
Join a thriving community of learners and professionals at Wema DevOps, where you can get training, coaching, and counseling on your journey into the DevOps industry. Register now at wemadevops.com and become a DevOps engineer today.
Now, just to give you a picture of how DevOps works. So these are the people that I refer to as developers, the people that are writing your code, okay? People that are programming. Now, as they program, they will do what we call a commit, because this programmer might be in Asia, another programmer might be in the US, another programmer or developer might be in Canada. But how do they work together on the same project? Your company members or your colleagues, members of your team might be spread out all across the globe. They might be in Africa, in China, in the US, in Canada, South America, but you are all working together, right, on a project. So we have what we call a distributed version control system. Most of the engineers, as they mentioned, they were talking about Git. They were talking about GitHub. You may have heard words like those. So GitHub, it is a software, or it's an environment that developers use, or you as a DevOps engineer are going to use when you want to collaborate together with other team members. So for example, right now, if you are working on a document on your computer, what you will end up doing is, if you want to update that document, most of us, what we do, we will just save it, give it, as we update it, we will save it under a different name, right? We are making an update to that. But that document that you're working on, it is on your computer. Now, if you wanted someone else to use it or to see it, then all you have to do is to share with somebody. But now we have things like Google Drive. I can create a document online and invite other people to collaborate, invite other people to share, to comment, to edit it. So that is an environment that Git or GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket provides, okay? So as a DevOps engineer, as a developer, you'll be writing different scripts. It could be in Python, it could be in YAML, it could be using Go, it could be Bash script, right? It could be HCL. We can write our Terraform code. And when we are writing that, we are pushing, we are doing what we call a push. We are saving it, we are committing it into this version control system. Now, once it is committed into that version control system, then because we want to automate the process, so what DevOps does is that we are building what we call a pipeline. We are building an automation. This automation, you will hear words like CI/CD, continuous integration, and continuous delivery or deployment. So that is our CI/CD. So once we do a commit, or once we push our code into GitHub, then our pipeline, our automation needs to take that code. Once it takes it, what does it need to do? It needs to build it. It needs to run it. We call that building. So once we commit our code, we can have our build tool configured within our CI/CD, that it's going to build that code, okay? So for our CI/CD, again, you had different engineers talk about things like GitHub Actions. We have GitLab CI, we have Jenkins, you had Azure DevOps. So all these are what we call CI/CD. They are our pipelines that we are going to do it, to use to build. What are some of the build tools? Depending on the project that we're working on, you can have build tools like Maven, you can have Gradle, you can have Ant, right? All these are build tools that will take the code and build it. Now, as we are running that, we know that security is very important. The code that we commit has to be tested. We have to run local tests when we are writing our code, but also when we commit it and our pipeline starts to run, the pipeline will run some tests, okay? It will run some tests to make sure that that code passes, that code is secure, it passes, it is compliant with what organization wants, right? Because of vulnerability, we don't want our code to be vulnerable. We don't want intruders into our applications. So we are going to subject our code test to our code. We can use different tools like Trivi, Checkov, SonarQube. All this is to make sure that we have code quality. The code that we're pushing, it is quality. Now, once our code passes all the tests, then we can build it into what we call artifacts, right? We can build and store these artifacts. These artifacts are stored in, depending on the artifact type, we can store it in Docker Hub. In Docker Hub, we will store what we call images. We can package our code into what we call an image. Once you have it as an image, you can store it. Then anytime you want to use it, because it has already been tested, it has been built and packaged, then we are going to use Docker Hub to pull that particular image and run it, and we'll see. So artifact repository, we can use Docker Hub, we can use JFrog, Artifactory, we can use Nexus, we can use ECR. This is when we're working in AWS, called Elastic Container Repository, right? We can use ECR as an artifact repository. Now, when we are ready to deploy these artifacts, so think about it's a user, a customer comes to you and say they want to build a website. This website, they want to sell products, okay? They're selling products. They will have a developer write that code for the website. And if you have multiple developers, they will collaborate it, right, in Git. Then once they build it, depending on the website, the ultimate goal is you want your end users to be able to go on your website and do what? And buy your product. So the ultimate goal is you always want these end users to be able to access your product. So for us, after we've built our product like that, then we will do what we call a deployment. So if this was a website, we can now deploy it. What tools can we use to deploy? We can use tools like Ansible. This is for continuous delivery or deployment. So we can, after we build it, we can use Ansible to deploy our application in application servers. These application servers can be things like Tomcat, JBoss, Wildfly, right? So we can deploy our application in these servers, and our end users are able to access our application. But we can also, not only in these servers, we can also deploy our application in what we call containers. Now, for the containers, we have what we call container orchestrators, whereby we can deploy it in what we call Kubernetes clusters, so that our end users can access our application through our cluster. Okay. So types of clusters that we have, EKS, this is when we'll be working with AWS as a cloud platform. So AWS offers a managed service called EKS. We'll also look at Azure. In Azure is a different kind of cloud technology. So in this cloud technology, it has a container service, which is a Kubernetes service that we call Azure Kubernetes service. Google is another cloud, another popular cloud. And this Google cloud, it also has a container service, Kubernetes service, right? We have OpenShift. Then we have Nomad. Nomad is another container service, container orchestration service by HashiCorp. So you can use Nomad, you can use OpenShift, Red Hat, you can use Google, you can use Azure or EKS, which is AWS. So depending on the cloud platform that you're working with, then you can create these Kubernetes clusters and deploy your application. But now when your application is running, let's say it's running in your cluster, you'd want to know how the application is performing. Let's say if the user tries to access your product and they can't access it, how would you know? So we have what we call monitoring. We have to monitor these applications. We are going to use monitoring tools to monitor our applications in the cluster to make sure that everything that we deployed is actually running optimum. When our users have an issue, we need to know and we need to be able to fix it. So for monitoring tools, we have tools like Datadog, we have Prometheus, we have Grafana, we have Jaeger, we have New Relic, we have ELK, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, right? So these are tools that we can implement to monitor our application, okay? Then let's say we have our application has failed. As Andy said, you could have a PagerDuty, right? Our application has failed. So if it fails, then how do we have our monitoring tools that will alert us. Once they alert us, you can configure it so that it will create a ticket. We have a ticketing system. That ticketing system, we're using a software called Jira. So we'll use Jira or we use ServiceNow. All these are ticketing environment, okay? Ticketing system. So once that ticket is created, this ticket goes back to the developers. So these developers, you'll get notified, PagerDuty, you get notified that there is something wrong with your application in the cluster. So with that, you can go back to your code here and rectify it. Ticket can go to the developers, they can go back and rectify that code. So this is a whole life cycle, right? It is a life cycle. We do continuous integration and we do continuous deployment and we do continuous monitoring, okay? Continuous monitoring. So it is a life cycle. So you as a DevOps engineer, you'll have the privilege to understand this whole life cycle, okay? You'll understand how things work. So the people in the operations are right here. They are taking orders from clients. They are taking orders from users, if it's a product they're selling. So these are operations. They don't know what happens here, in between here. But you have your developers here that whenever the request comes in from the operations that something has broken or something needs to be updated, a ticket is created and developers work on it. So you as a DevOps engineer, you understand this whole process, okay? You'll understand this whole process in depth and you will be able to know if something breaks down. How do you fix it? Okay? How do you fix it and where do you go? So because of that, what you offer